Hi, everyone. Welcome. Wanted to first off, thank you all for joining us today. My name is Sean Conway with Screencastify. We have two extremely special guests here joining us today for a session that I think not only do many folks have a lot of curiosity and questions about, but also one that is unfortunately too real in districts across the United States today. So we are going to spend some time talking about how our friends at Capistrano USD maximizing value while minimizing disruptions. How did they advocate for their teachers, students, and tools during some pretty decent budget challenges, which is probably saying it lightly. And again, this is unfortunately something that many folks throughout the country have had to deal with, in particular this summer. And we are so lucky to have our friends from Capo here joining us today. But before we jump into that, wanted to give you a quick intro on me. I am Sean Conway, the Director of Customer Solutions at Screencastify. I was previously a high school teacher, department chair, and assistant principal, but as we all know, you are certainly not here to see me. You are here to learn and hear from our friends at Capo, Stephanie Avera and Lana Nguyen. I'm going to quickly throw it over to them for an intro. Stephanie, would you mind?
Sure. Thanks, Sean. My name is Stephanie Avera. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Capistrano Unified School District. I've been in this role since January 2023. Before that, I was Director of Ed Tech for this district in Southern California for about 5 years. And before that, I taught middle school English and history for 29 years. So happy to be here and talk about all these different situations and needs.
Stephanie,
Lana?
thank you so much. Lana?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lana Nguyen. I'm the Director of Ed Tech for Capistrano Unified, and I'm starting my 17th year in education, and this will be my second year here at Capistrano Unified. Previously, I was in San Diego in the same role, as well as a former elementary classroom teacher. So excited to kind of share about our experiences.
Thank you both. Once again, we are so appreciative of both of your time, spending this time not only kind of going through what it is that you've all been dealing with the last little bit, but also your willingness to share. I think that the expertise that you both bring to the table, not only from your intros, which certainly are just scratching the surface of the amount of depth and experience you have in education, but really coming to us with over 50 years of experience in education combined. I think that the way in which people are able to kind of learn from folks like you both is going to be helpful, not only in their day-to-day, but just thinking broadly. And I think that Stephanie and Lana, when we were kind of preparing and chatting about some of the things that we're going over today, I think what struck me personally was just the creativity in a sense of how you were not only understanding and being aware of what it is that you were looking to with preparing for a new school year, but also how you wanted to bring kind of collaboration to solving those problems. And what I think I'm personally and selfishly most excited about is just at the forefront of all of your decisions, which I think is why we really wanted you both to share, is that teachers and students were always at the forefront. And I think that of all things that we at Screencastify want to celebrate and promote, it is our wonderful partners throughout the country that, like Capo, that are constantly thinking about how they can best serve students and teachers. So thank you again. Really excited to chat about how you all were maximizing the impact of some of the things that happened over the last couple months. And without further ado, we can get into it. So the first question, Stephanie, I'm going to throw it over to you to get us started. When you think about the current landscape that's going on, both in education and more broadly, how would you describe what you are facing as the Chief Technology Officer of a large school district in the United States?
Right. So thanks, Sean. So lots of challenges being a CTO for a large school district and specifically in Southern California. But the fact is that, and nobody likes to talk about the pandemic, but the pandemic did happen and it caused a lot of changes and adjustments in education and specifically educational technology. And so I was reading something the other day that was talking about after the pandemic, we're having to hone in on figuring out what is important and what is not important and like focusing on just the most important parts. Because during the pandemic, there was kind of this huge windfall of funding that was available, this one-time funding that was available to all districts in the United States, which was incredible, right? We've never had that kind of windfall. However, it became, yes, we did provide Chromebooks for every student. And yes, we did provide all these different programs for students, but all this funding was one-time funding coming from the federal with the state government. So now what we have to do in our current situation is we have to hone in and decide what is the most important parts that we need to keep and continue to focus on, and what is the parts that we no longer need or need to adjust, because now we have budget deficits. And so now we have to decide, okay, what are we going to cut that we did bring on because of the pandemic, but we no longer need, or we just have to focus more on what is absolutely necessary. And those challenges are huge, because anytime you give teachers or administrators tools to use in the classroom and they get to use them and they're used at a high usage, and then you say, well, that was super fun, but we're going to take those back now that we don't have the funding any longer. It's really not the way you want to go, right? And it doesn't make you very popular either. So we are using lots of different data to decide what we will continue to use and what we will remove from our systems. Like I said at the very beginning, it's just about honing in and focusing on what is the most important, what affects our students the most, and has the most impact, and that's what we'll keep.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think that that's just such a good introductory response when we kind of frame this particular conversation about there's so many items that you are both dealing with on a daily basis, is that even the content of what we're talking about, like that's only a part of your day-to-day responsibilities. There are just so many other items that you're dealing with while managing these different challenges. And I think that that's kind of a segue into our second question, in that the challenges that you're dealing with currently, you mentioned about the ESSER funding and some of the items that had happened back to the pandemic, that certainly did frame a few years into where we find ourselves today. And I think I'll go back to you first, Stephanie, and then we'll kick it to Lana second, is that when we think about districts, especially similar to yours, staying ahead of the curve. And I think that what has really struck me from talking to you both frequently is that, like, you never seem to be surprised. There's always a real awareness about kind of what things are going to happen. And so I'm curious that when you think about trying to stay ahead of the curve, what strategies do you utilize to make sure that your budget challenges are planned for well ahead of time, so that you can kind of think in both the near, medium, and long term?
Right. So this is a great question, because it is one that I had to learn as becoming CTO. Like I said in my intro, I was a teacher for 30 years. I was in my classroom and I could handle those students that were coming in and out. But now I'm handling the technology for an entire district and have a team of managers, you know, whether it's the network manager or the field services manager or the student information services manager. When I first started in this position, I just wanted to know everything that was going on. Like I need to be informed, because I do not like surprises, because surprises can lead to huge problems, right? In a district of our size, or any district, actually, it doesn't matter the size. And so as the lead of the technology department, I'm always in everybody's business and asking what's going on, you know, add me to the emails. And then we also, I told my team that we need to plan out 3 to 5 years in advance. Like, I need to know what's coming, so that budget wise, when fiscal might tell me, you know, we're cutting $13-14 million this year. What is TIS? That's our Department of Technology Information Services. What can you cut? And so when I have the goals of every team member of my department for the next 3 to 5 years, I can say, well, you know, these are our goals, but what can we live with, or what can we live without, more than anything with technology? And as technology has become more pervasive in everything, that it just is, it's in everything, right? Whether it's in the telephone systems or in the just the marquees that are out in front of the school sites, everything, the fire alarms, everything is technology driven now. So the way I don't get caught by surprise is I'm just in every goal planning and strategy meeting with all my different departments. And then I make them share all their goals with everybody in the department, because with any big technology department, every department is interactive or depending on another department. And so that a programmer should be working with the networking team, should be working with the ed tech team. And so they share their goals and we make sure that we all have the same goals for the next 3 to 5 years. And so that there's no surprises and that we can reach those goals. And so I make them do SMART goals as well, because I want them to know that they can't just say some lofty goal that can't be measured or can't be, there's no timeline registered with it. So that was a learning curve for my team as well, who are mainly not educators. And so they have learned, you know, through me and through Lana as well, who's an educator, about doing goals that make sense and over time that we all can achieve together.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I think that that just is such a wonderful kind of example of the overarching view that broad technology departments have to deal with. And I think speaking to the collaboration and goal setting, I think takes us really into, Lana, I'd love to hear from you with your role. I think the educational technology component has so many like relevancies to both what Stephanie just said, but also kind of how you think about it. So I'd love to hear kind of what strategies you're thinking about as you try to prepare for those things ahead of time.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that is extremely beneficial, especially here at Capo, is the structure of how our department is set up. So we have ed tech and IT together as one, working together under Stephanie. And in the CTO position, she is an educator background. So having that knowledge and that experience really helps support the work that we do. Technology, right, continues to shift all the time, and especially since we're working to support educators and students, I think the understanding of how it is in the classroom is huge. And so I think that makes it's a bit positive or how our district was structured. When I got the position, I was excited to have the opportunity to work with EdTech and IT to be number one, because it's really important to really help support implementation of new tools, really thinking of how we really support our staff. And so I think one, the structure of how our district is set up really benefits the work that we're doing. And then two, to echo Stephanie, collaboration and communication is huge, and really thinking about big picture planning, because I think we know things are always constantly changing, but really knowing what the goals are is really important. One important thing that we have this year is in Orange County Department of Ed, there is a collaboration of all of the ed tech leaders to come together once a month, especially with AI. That's our focus this year. And so having that support with other ed tech leaders has really helped me to, one, bring back information that's really relevant to our department, our team, and two, again, that networking piece and really communicating and sharing ideas. With the budget structure that we have in our district, it's really great to hear from the other districts who are also funded similarly to us to then really get some better ideas and to streamline the work. Obviously, some districts are funded differently, so they have other ways to support their teachers, but we really can work together and streamline the process. And right, having that ability to network and have questions has been really powerful for this school year. And so again, just to echo, I think it's really important to really think big, big picture ideas, and really have the opportunity to network and connect with others is super important. And last thing to add, in my role, I've been really working with our Ed Services department to really help support the work, right? They're leading the work with the curriculum, and with everything being digital now, our team is super important to be part of the conversation. So I think that's another huge strategy to be really on top of it. Ed Tech and Ed Services need to work hand in hand to really help support the implementation of all our curriculum, right? Everything's digital now. So it's really important to all work together.
Lana, thank you so much. And I think just to highlight, I think so much of what you said is so relevant and important to the people that are watching this, and especially in the sense of when you talk about collaboration amongst your IT, your ed tech, and then your ed services department, being able to really have that consistent kind of communication and collaboration back and forth, I'm sure is always thinking about the kind of impact on the classroom. And I think that to highlight what you had said about you and Stephanie both having such significant teaching experience, it allows you to really, and that's what has become so obvious as I've been kind of hearing in these prep conversations with you both about the way in which you approach these things, is that now you do have this significantly large impact on what the district is doing. But you're also teachers. You're both teachers. And I think that that is something that really cannot go understated, and the importance that that has when we think about impact and how challenges are then kind of perceived. So thank you for sharing. I think that was really helpful. And I think it's also a really good segue into our next question, which Stephanie, I'll kick it over to you. And when we think about these decisions and kind of planning ahead, and a lot of that, much of that does revolve around budgeting. And so I'm curious, what do you consider when you're budgeting for technology within a school district?
So going back to the fact that I was a teacher for so long, like I still consider myself a teacher. It's really hard for me. Like I've been a CTO for a year and a half, but I was a teacher for 30 years. So I still consider myself a teacher, and that lens is always forefront in my mind. And so, and before I was CTO, I was director of ed tech, Lana's position, and I trained all the teachers, right? So one thing I consider number one is consistency. The worst thing you can do to a teacher and to students is change platforms every year. Change, oh, let's try this one. Let's try this one. I've seen, when I've been in ed tech for a long time, it was like, oh, 50 apps in an hour. Like, let's go through them. Like, oh my gosh, that's a clear way to drive a teacher away from technology. And so when we brought Lana on, one of my goals was, let's just keep things consistent with teachers. We've had a lot of breakthroughs in the last couple of years because of the pandemic, but we have brought on new programs that we're just going to stay consistent with. We're not bringing anything new in. It's another, it's a downfall of having a budget crisis, but it's also a good thing, because guess what? We can't afford to bring anything else new in. And so it's kind of nice in that regard. Like, we have tools. Let's just get really good at those tools. And so sometimes when we switch teachers around so much, they can't get in depth with any tool, and they can't get really good at, using that tool. And so when we changed over our LMS during the pandemic, every once in a while a teacher will say, yeah, but how long are we going to have this? And I'm like, the amount of training that went into getting our 2,000 teachers to use our new LMS, I don't foresee that ever going away, because it was such a huge, heavy lift. And so what do we consider, like, as far as budget concerned? I also look at data usage, and over the last couple of years, unfortunately, we've had some technology programs go, and it's basically on you looking at the data usage, and if a lot of teachers aren't using it, then it's going to go, because they may say it's only $2 a student, but if only 20 of our students are using it, it's a very expensive tool. So I would say consistency, and then data usage. I'm a numbers person. I'm always looking at numbers, and making sure that our numbers make sense, so that I can look at our budget and decide, yes, we're making the best use of our budget on what the tools that we have that we're providing for our teachers and students, and they're still getting that world-class education that we think very highly of in Capo. So that's just the consistency in programs.
Thanks, Stephanie. And I think that segues perfectly, Lana, into this next question, which I'd love for you to chime in on, is that, Stephanie, when you were sharing, thinking about the cost of switching or moving or doing different things. Lana, you're obviously intimately involved with leading these conversations about new educational technologies. And so curious, when it's you and Stephanie, and then when you're, Lana, working with your leadership team and the other folks throughout the district, what are you considering, when you're examining or thinking about consolidating new educational technologies?
So one of the things that I absolutely always look into when we're implementing new tools or technologies would be professional learning, right? As former teachers, we believe that if there isn't professional learning for teachers to support the work of the tool, then the usage will not be great. And without the usage, then that's money that's being wasted. And so that's absolutely important for us to consider when we're implementing new tools, as well as, do we have the people, the team to help implement that professional learning. I think once there's a tool that's determined, right, based on need, based on the goals and the vision of the district. It's really important that there is a clear process and communication, right, to ensure that the program gets used correctly. And so I think when appropriate, I think at a pilot, it's always important to be able to test and see all the bugs in the particular program and to really make sure that our professional learning matches that. Having such a large, having so many, being in such a large district, it's really important that we don't just pilot all these different programs, because if you're piloting all the programs, as Stephanie shared, teachers may get used to the program, and then once we take it away, then you have teachers who are not very happy with that. And so programs vendors come to me all the time asking to pilot, and I absolutely, based on the way our district is set up, I always say no to pilots unless it's something that we are really needing, and that's part of the goals of the district, to then pilot and to ensure that we have the funding for it initially to be able to move forward with it. So I think those two aspects are extremely important. And obviously when it comes down to professional learning, I'm from an elementary background, Stephanie's from a secondary background. So those are things to consider as well, looking at the structure of how our district, time to help teachers provide professional learning for them. All these elements are important as we think about pushing out a new tool. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lana. And I think it's so refreshing and helpful to hear even when you're both kind of speaking about the consistency through which how you weigh your decision making. To what you just said, Lana, about like the presence of pilots. At first, it's like, oh wow, this is cool, it's free. But then it's, well, hold on a minute, and then you're thinking about the long-term impact of that has back to the planning question and kind of thinking ahead. And so props to you for always thinking about the teachers. And I think that goes right into our next question, which, Lana, I'm sticking with you. When being in your role, thinking about academic growth and how the educational technology role and your presence is supporting that, how are you thinking about what solutions or platforms are students enjoying while seeing serious academic growth?
So I know as a student, it's super important for students to be able to have tools and resources to really help build out their skills that are needed for the future. So we used to call it the 4 C's, right? Communication, collaboration, and creation. And so all those, things to consider when we're pushing out a new tool. And I think it's really important that students are able to show their learning through the programs and really being able to have students have the opportunity to create. I think that's where students are going to be able to show their learning and really to transform what they're learning in the classroom. So those are things I consider voice and choice for students, really making sure that they have the opportunity to showcase what they know and what they're learning.
Thanks, Lana. I think that really does round out kind of the way in which the decision making, both of thinking about the new tools and consolidation, is that in the end, it's really about how students are able to engage and approach, and then the impact that it has on their day-to-day. So thank you for sharing. And so that kind of goes into the next question, which, throwing over back to Stephanie now, when we think about existing products that you want or need to keep, Stephanie, in our prep call, we had talked a lot about this question in the sense of like how you approach those needing to keep certain things versus wanting to keep certain things, and then checking boxes for that. Like, how does that play out for you in Capistrano?
So I like the question, does technology check the box for all? No, but it should check some boxes for all, right? Because the idea that technology is not needed in a classroom is just not existent anymore. What shouldn't be existent anymore, because we are 24 years into the 21st century, and that whole 21st century learner is like, we're a quarter away through the first 25 years. And so what products we want to keep or need to keep, I will tell you that, again, we like to keep it consistent, but we want to keep it simple too for teachers. You don't need a big fancy program in order to be creative, be collaborative, be interactive, be reaching out to the intervention students and the enrichment students. I used to do a huge study with the teachers on just using Google Slides for everything and putting everything into that one product. And and they loved it because they're like, I mean, all I have to do is go to Google Sites. That's all you have to do. And they're like, okay, I can do that. Or, you know, now that we have a true LMS, everything can exist in your LMS. Like you don't have to bring in other tools or go to other tools. And so I always get that question about like, or Lon and I will talk about the leader that says, well, I'm just not techie. Well, that's not okay anymore, right? Because being techie, I don't know what that is anymore, because who is not somewhat techie, especially if you're a leader in education, you should be tech forward. And especially with the AI surgence that we're seeing. And you know, a lot of people will say, well, was AI going to take over my job? And I'll say, heard this many times, that AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use AI will take your job. So, you know, the idea that, you know, does technology check the box for all in different ways? It should. There should be a place for it in every classroom. Now, should it be the entire hour or whatever that students are in front of you? Absolutely not. And I think that has also been with the pandemic, when parents got to see inside the classrooms a little bit more. They're very concerned about screen time, and I completely understand that. However, it doesn't mean that we throw everything away. We just have to be a little bit more consistent and more just the idea of how we use it is more important than just do we use it.
Thanks, Stephanie. I think you touched on two super important parts, and then I'd love for you to chime in on this too, and the fact of like the bar has changed. Like the idea of technology and its place is that it's not something that's separate. And I think that's what's so neat about what you both have already shared so far, is like ed tech is there. Like it has to be, because of the way that it sits at the intersection of technology and curriculum. And so, Lana, would love for you, how do you think about this question?
Yes, Stephanie and I have a hashtag tech forward goal to push this year. So, but really, I think the use of technology, there's that balanced approach and really modeling for teachers through professional learning, where there are options when you may need to use the technology, and there's times when you don't need it. But I think really showcasing or showing students there's different ways to use it, so they become the self-directed learner and they decide when it's best for them to use it. So that, you know, we've been talking about meaningful technology integration all these years, but I think this is where it's even more powerful, because we focus on those specific tools we have district-wide and really taking those tools and learning it to the best, you know, to the best potential, and then using it when you need it. So I think with, you know, the tools that we do have, I think really making sure that we use it in a way that's meaningful for all our students and our teachers. So.
Thanks, Lana. I really, really appreciate what you just said about the way that students are choosing to access their own education in many ways, in a sense of like the pandemic did have so many negative things that it caused. And I think if we want to try to put a positive spin, the way that students access their own learning, and then like the really understanding that adults and teachers have about the process of students and how they approach that day to day, specifically with the tech tools in place. It's really wonderful to hear how you are thinking about that. So thank you both for sharing. And that kind of taking us into a similar to one of the previous questions, but a little bit of a different spin, in that when Capo is evaluating new tools and trying to understand the future outlook, Lana, you know, I'll ask you to chime in first if that's okay, because you were talking about pilots, which I think is somewhat similar here. But do you attend webinars or conferences, or like how are you thinking about those when both new people are getting in touch with you, but even existing ones that are bringing out new stuff? What does that look like?
Right. So I know initially, you know, making sure we're understanding of, you know, the clear goals and vision of the department, the teacher, the site, school, to then make that determination of what programs that you might need. So I know when it's cost effective, our team, you know, attends conferences or those webinars to really hear from other programs. But I think being able to network with other tech leaders around our district has also been powerful, because I know, speaking about equity, right? If other students in another district are using a tool, it's good to consider that, because then students all across have that opportunity to learn through the specific tool. So I think ultimately, pilot when you can, but making sure that it goes back to match the goals of that particular need. And so again, and learning ed tech's always new, so it's always important to see what other tools are out there. But I know there's certain ones that are really helpful to help transform the work that everyone's doing. So.
Thanks, Lana. And Stephanie, thinking about the framing of kind of what Lana just said, is that I would imagine there are times when you unfortunately have to maybe deliver a no about certain things that either people or teachers or schools might want. And so when you think about the evaluation of some of those requests and then how you're kind of putting that over the lens of an entire district's technology budget and what that looks like, where are you starting when those decisions are made?
So I never just say no, I say no, but because there has to be a way to mitigate or provide some type of service that would equal what we're taking away. So that always lessens the painful part of the no. And so I remember a couple of years we were getting rid of a program that was quite expensive, but quite a few teachers used it. So this was kind of the opposite of what I said earlier, and I'll get to why. Because it was so expensive, but they were utilizing just 10% of the program. And so I could buy a program that was just 100% of that program. Like all they used it for was what this other program, and it was like a fourth of the cost. So I would say no to this program, and I was not very popular, but I said, but I'm providing you with another program that will meet your needs and meet the needs of your students. We're just saving the district, quite a bit of money. A lot of times teachers, staff, their concern, and rightly so, is more about their day-to-day and how they're going to provide the lessons and not about the budget, which that's my concern, right? To make sure that our budget is met and we're being fiscally responsible. So I would say every time I deliver a no, it's a no, but what can we do? What can we show you? Because a lot of these tools overlap. Like there's just no reason for, so many tools when you can deliver the same lesson, the same type of outcome, get the same type of outcome from a student or your students by utilizing another tool that we have. You're just not aware of it. Our biggest challenge in our district is we're a big district of 2,000 teachers. It's just training all those teachers. And so going back to that consistency, like if I trained or Lana and her two TOSAs trained 2,000 teachers on something and we got everybody on board, it's going to be a hard press to remove that program away from us unless there's a significant reason why. And so again, that no, but is what I would provide.
I really appreciate that, especially within the context to highlight what you said about there always being communication about an understanding and explanation of why certain things are happening. And I think, as you mentioned, teachers are amazing. They have so many things that they're dealing with, as you both intimately know, but they're also reasonable. And I think that they understand that there are different things that sometimes need to happen. And so that communication with your people, I'm sure, is appreciated. So thanks for saying that. We are at about 5 minutes, so we have 2 more questions. So what we'll do is, if it's okay with Stephanie and Lana, I'll give you one each, if that's all right. And so Lana, why don't we start with you on this one? When you think about your educational technology priorities, obviously we are having this conversation for a reason. We are very fortunate to consider you and Capo partners. Can you tell us about like the fact that why was there, some advocating for an interactive video tool, even though there are some pretty significant financial concerns that the district is thinking about?
Absolutely. So I know when you're using an interactive video tool, it's really important that it's versatile. And I think that's one of the reasons why we continue to have this tool, because it really allows teachers to really personalize their learning. They're able to share resources and really be creative. And I think that's the most important aspect of it. There's many ways and ways to utilize it. And I think students are also given the opportunity to, one, learn from it, use the resources to then learn more and show their learning. And I think ultimately having a tool that's versatile, being able to use it in different ways. I know just the other day, our staff, another member in our staff was needing a request for support. And I said, hey, how about this tool? Because it's really important that they can show their learning and use it in a way that's helpful for them. So I think most importantly, it's really important to have it be optional ways to show and do the work that you need with the tool.
Thanks, Lana. And transitioning into that last one, which is really closely related to question 8. Stephanie, when our relationship with Capo started, it was actually you and I who had those initial conversations years ago. And thinking both about what that at least it's over 4 years, I think now. But thinking about the presence of video, and you said it earlier about framing it through, no matter what, when you talk about video, it's going to be framed at this point in time through starting off during COVID, usually. But it's changed so dramatically, both in terms of Screencastify, but also how teachers and students are utilizing it. And so when you think about that journey, how has video changed the teachers within Capo, their approach to provide personalized learning to students?
Right, I think you hit on it, Sean, with the word personalized. So it allows us to personalize the learning for the student, whether it's a personalized feedback, whether it's, a personalized lesson for for a student that's out because of illness or for a vacation, or whether it's, intervention to watch the video over and over and over again until they get the idea, or it's an enrichment. Okay, you've mastered this. Here's an example of something else that you can do. And it's also really important for us that it fits into our LMS, because again, we like to make a one-stop shop, simple product for our teachers so that they utilize it. If it becomes too complicated, then it's too complicated, right? And so they won't use it. So it just, that personalization that video affords teachers on a daily basis is just, I don't think it can be replicated with anything else. So when I first started using Screencastify myself in the classroom, I didn't realize that I could use it for feedback. And I thought, when I first saw that in one of your trainings, I thought, how powerful is that? Because I taught English, so I could write a sentence on, explaining why this, paragraph needed to be rewritten, and the student could see that and read it. But if they hear my voice, then just makes it so much more personal, and it makes it sound like I am talking specifically to them, and I'm just not writing a random message. And so I really like the personalization that video affords our teachers, especially, in our classrooms, we have, between 30 and sometimes 40 students in a classroom. When I taught middle school, I would get 35 students every 52 minutes coming at me 6 times a day. And so by the end of the day, it's like, okay, did I talk to that kid? I don't even know if I talked to that kid. But with video, it can be more personal. And so I just think it just makes it more I don't want to say personal, but that's what it is. It allows us to personalize education.
Thank you for saying that. I think that we have really enjoyed and been so appreciative of the work and the journey that Capo has undergone, and the fact that we've been just a small part of that is amazing. But it's really the work of you two, of your teachers, of your students in the district in terms of how that journey has gone. And so just wanted to thank you all. That was our last question. If you all have any questions, please do drop them in the chat. We will definitely get back to you all if we don't have time now, which we don't, unfortunately. But wanted to thank you again, both for your attendance and joining, but also, and first and foremost, Stephanie, Lana, thank you very, very much for your time, for your expertise, and for sharing that with the group. If anybody is able or willing and you would like to learn more, if you just scan that QR code, we are happy to follow up, both with kind of sending additional information and stuff from Stephanie and Lana. But once again, thank you both very much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.